right, dude. I'm really excited today. We're kicking off the Flow Factory podcast number 7. I'm joined here by my good friend, Jeff Bristol. So me and him have a long history of debauchery and winning wrestling matches, and basically now we're just good friends, and we both are going through fatherhood simultaneously. Both have kids that are 17 and a half months old now. So good to have you here, Jeff.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, I want to give you a little intro here. So Jeff is a trainer at, what's the name of the gym again?
Fitness Quest 10.
Fitness Quest 10. He trains the likes of Drew Brees, Michael Chandler, Darian Sproles, Chase Zolman, who I have the pleasure, I don't even listen to the pleasure, of training as well in wrestling, and Talita Alankar, and many more athletic phenoms who are basically at the pinnacle of their profession in different sports: baseball, football, basketball, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all those things. So he has a big network of people that he's trained, and he was once a high-level wrestler and all-American wrestler in high school, and wrestled Division I for UC Davis, which is now defunct, doesn't exist anymore, but due to Title IX, but we'll talk about that later. So it's good to have you here, man.
Thank you, my man. I'm super pumped to be here. It's pretty nostalgic getting together with you, you know. I know we don't get to see each other a lot, but I follow you all the time, you know, in your life, and it's just great to be here, man.
Ditto, man. Yeah. Ditto. Like me and Jeff have traveled a bunch together, and Jeff has been there for some of the high points in my life and low points, and vice versa. Yes, so we know each other really well. We were on the same high school wrestling team together in Temecula, and Jeff was one of those wrestlers that was just one of the best of the best. I think he was ranked in the top 5 in the country in high school. Won Reno, which is like arguably the toughest high school wrestling tournament there is. And I was transferred all that like experience that he's had on the mats to training others. And I mean, if you see him, you could go follow him on Instagram. He posts a lot, and he's one of the best trainers out there. So if you're in Southern California and San Diego, give his gym a try and seek him out, man.
Yes, sir.
So I brought Jeff in for multiple reasons other than being my friend and someone we have a vast history, but he has a checkered past, so to speak, which I wanted to talk about and be able to kind of go into some depth about, because it's a problem. People get caught up in doing drugs, and it's something that some people don't have the restraint to be able to come back from. And Jeff, luckily, was able to persevere, and now is like, you know, amongst the living.
Yes, sir, man.
So I guess like a good way to start this is like talk about how things kind of started on you getting injured. I think you got injured and were prescribed like Vicodin or.
Yeah, you know, I could say that's, you know, because that's a pretty common way that people say, like, oh, you know, he's, you know, got a drug problem because of these surgeries at this point in his life. And that did happen, like, my freshman year in high school. You know, I missed my, you know, you and I met when I was in middle school, basically. Yeah. You were, like, a standout senior at Temecula Valley getting recruited by Nebraska and everything. And I was, like, an up-and-comer 8th grader coming to high school practices and
giving me all I could want, dude. Yeah.
Just like, and I, you know, very different style. I was just kind of more like a banger, and you know, but I'd always want to, you know, ask guys like yourself or Ryan Kane or some of the other guys at Temecula to wrestle with me, and I was just a young guy, and so I remember being like an 8th grader and knowing that like some of the guys on the high school team smoked weed and stuff like that, and up until my like middle school, like 7th, 8th grade years, I was always very like perfect kid.
Yeah, I remember you being like
straight A's.
Standard.
Like, I went to private school like up till 8th grade. Like I didn't really get exposed to a lot of stuff, and so as a young kid, my family, you know, I had such a great childhood. My parents, and played a bunch of sports. Went to private school, and it wasn't until like I remember it was 8th grade, and I think it was a wrestling camp actually. But 8th grade freshman year that I first got exposed to some things that you get exposed to in high school, like drinking or smoking weed, you know. And I always thought that I was going to be that. Like I even remember having a talk with one of our other friends, Tyler Morant. Mm-hmm. We were in 8th grade together. He was a freshman, and I said to him, "It's like, hey man, like next year when we're in high school, when I'm in high school, you got to like let's not smoke weed together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember making that pact with him when I was like in 8th grade, right? And then like fast forward to my freshman year, I literally think that the first time I got into a circle of some of the older guys and like we're at a party or something and that came out, it was like, here, pass it over, you know, like right out the window. I was so like, my personality and everything, like, you know, like the party scene, just that kind of stuff in high school is really the first time, you know, I got exposed to that stuff and I was really drawn towards that. You know, it was like, and that kind of just grew from there, you know, the social scene, parties and everything like that. Like, even though I was getting like, you know, really good grades, straight A's, and I was doing really good in wrestling and everything like that, I put so much time and effort into my social scene and the parties and everything, and that was really drawn to that I could only balance all three for a certain amount of time until like, you know, the middle of my college career when it caught up with me.
Yeah,
you know?
like at a certain point your luck kind of runs out.
Totally.
But I mean, not to jump too far back, I remember you being able to balance things in a way that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And I thought I was balancing things decently because I lived like a party lifestyle, and I was doing some things that, you know, I usually don't talk about, where I was dabbling in psychedelics and smoking pot and drinking regularly and flourishing on the mat.
Right.
Doing well in school enough to the point where there's no issues.
Right.
Socially, things are fine.
Totally.
So I get to a certain degree what you went through, but I mean, you would be like doing some craziness.
Yeah.
You would be winning team runs in a D1 program, being the best wrestler in the room, and then
staying up all night doing everything.
Like, I mean, it's crazy to even think about how many other athletes on the team must have been like, how is this even possible? Totally. Or did they even know, some of your teammates?
Honestly, not really, because none of them, I don't know. I think I just kind of like was attracted to that crowd in high school, so that by the time I was through high school, I'd already tried every type of drug.
Yeah.
I was pretty like I was juggling everything pretty well at the time.
Yeah, you could balance things and still perform. I remember from a young age.
I was balancing a lot of stuff as far as like, you know, some of the other stuff, but still at the same time, I was starting to deal with some consequences.
There was cracks in the dam, like
exactly.
little
it was
by
starting
little.
to exactly, and like, you know, I got DUI in high school, got kicked off the team my junior year. You know, I did have a couple surgeries my sophomore, junior year. You know, so like my high school career
was checkered.
Could have been like
you could have been the most successful wrestler in high school to make the history. Yeah,
who knows? But
the potential
the potential was there, and I mean, I deal with some young athletes now in my training and stuff, like, and I'm just like, damn, if I had that mindset when I was your age, like, but at the same time, it's something that drives me today. So it's like, it's, you know, it is what it is. But I do, you know, at the time I was, I, you know, started to deal with those consequences in high school. Was able to talk myself out of a lot of situations.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
the gift of gab helped you.
The gift of gab, totally. You know, I was able to get a scholarship to college to wrestle, and it still was kind of like the whole facade was going on. But I was like, even at Davis, and when I went to UC Davis to wrestle, and you know, I was getting recruited by other colleges and stuff. Even like Ivy, like Columbia was recruiting me. Some other East Coast schools, you know, a couple California schools like Cal Poly, Davis, and everything. And I really liked the team at Davis, but my lifestyle continued into college, you know. And when I was up there, I wasn't like spending my extra time trying to like hang out with, you know, the assistant coaches or, you know, go do my studies or anything. It was like, all right, where's the biggest frat party here? Like,
you were looking for the dark side.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I was always drawn to that. But then at the same time, when I went into the wrestling room, I was balls to wall in there. And coaches loved that. They always loved that. Like when I was in high school, like the way I practiced was the same way I partied, and it was just kind of like balls to the wall, you know.
I think there's something to be said. I'm not advocating for like living a lifestyle of, you know, recklessness and being uncontrolled, but I think there's something to say when you're young and you cut loose on the mat and you live a certain way on the mat, how that transfers off the mat. And I think those balance each other out a little bit, because once you start to become conservative and you start to control what you take into your body and you sleep on time. That kind of sometimes transfers on the mat because you become less reckless. You want to have everything controlled and you want to be sharp, and everything just becomes a little different. And I think at a young age, a lot of these successful athletes live recklessly, and they live that way on and off the mat. And on the mat or on the field of play, they do great. They do great things, and it's amazing. I'm not advocating that. But a lot of times that's the kind of athletes you get that are really successful. But at a certain point, I think the life off the field or mat, that catches up with you, and you can no longer compete because of, say, like a John Jones or some of these athletes that kind of shoot themselves in their foot because they can't control themselves enough to where they could even make it to game day. So it's an interesting like dichotomy where you have like you were an amazing athlete, still are. I mean, you're a specimen today. I mean, you're what, 34 years old now?
34, yeah.
And like you might have 5% body fat. I think you're in better shape now than you were when you were wrestling. Probably. But
I'm taking better care of my body, that's for sure.
Definitely. But you were a little more reckless then, and you took those chances on the mat, and that's what probably got you a lot of those wins where, you know, someone who wrestled more conservative probably lived more conservative in their home life and how they like went about their day-to-day training and their relationships, where you were just like doing what you did and going off momentum and winning. So it's sometimes as a coach now, I could see both sides. I could see like, well, hey, this guy's winning and he's doing what he's doing. So until it kind of catches him in the butt, and that's something, you know, there's a gray area there sometimes.
Well, one thing about that is that, like, so say that the way that I was, like, in my wrestling and everything like that, a lot of it was stuff that you can't coach. You know, like the way a certain kid practices or something like that. Like, you can't coach that. You can't motivate a kid to do that. It's just like that.
You can't teach heart.
Yeah.
You can't teach heart. Yeah.
But at the same time, like, and here's another, you know, way of looking at it is that, like, I was doing a lot of the same things that some of my friends were doing, like yourself or other people like in our generation that we were doing the same stuff together, but I'm just a little bit different, cut from a different cloth. That's why, like, certain people, like, you know, the mindset was that, okay, you're in high school, you're going to smoke some weed, you might try a little bit of other things, and then maybe in college you do these parties and everything, but then at some point it's like you just grow up and you get out of it, and then you get a job and you have a family and life goes on. Well, for me, it wasn't that. It was just like, you know, the drinking and drug use, mainly drug use, kind of like increased over the years, and it became less and less of a party type of a situation. It was more just like lifestyle. I was addicted to the feeling, drugs, to the high. You know, I chased the high, and to the point where, and I was like the person that would do whatever, you know, and it led me into the hard drugs that other athletes or students, you know, at UC Davis weren't doing. You know, I was not hanging out with students when I was doing those things, and I found little circles, and then it got to a point where, you know, I ended up going to rehab for the first time in the middle of my college career, where it's like I look back at high school and college, and it's like, man, like, okay, I lost 2 years of my high school wrestling career because of discipline issues and injuries and this and that, a lot of because of my lifestyle. And then in college, you know, I was a NCAA qualifier and coulda, shoulda, woulda been this or whatever, you know, and Derek Moore was my teammate and we were workout partners, and we just like go back and forth in the room. And then what ended up happening was I went off to rehab and he won a national championship.
Weren't you actually in rehab?
I was in rehab in Palm Springs my senior year of college. That was the first time I went to rehab. My coach, Lenny Zaleski, great man right there. He, you know, spoke to my parents, and, you know, at that point, all my teammates and stuff were kind of concerned about what was going on with me, and I wasn't showing up for practices, and I wasn't able to keep it up anymore. It was like it had passed that point, and so, you know, I took a quarter off of school in the middle of wrestling season, my senior year, which I should have been, you know,
vying for a national title
or doing, or All-American or something, you know, and instead I'm in Palm Springs and you're not allowed to have your own cell phones there or anything. So I'm like on a payphone getting news from my parents that Derek just won a national championship.
Your drill partner, someone you had wrestled off, someone that you were,
totally
like, it's crazy how the lives kind of intersect and then branch off where,
Totally.
you know, you could have definitely had the similar story as Derek.
Right.
Who, you know, Derek's a different guy though, you know, as far as like the way he lives. And
oh yeah.
He's like a military guy.
Oh dude, ton of respect for Derek.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, me and Derek.
Great wrestler.
We were the same year in college, and he had an incredible work ethic, and he was one of those kids that was in college and he was focused on school and sports.
Yeah.
You know, like I run across a ton of those kind of kids today, you know, like at the gym I work at, I meet these kids that just have this, you know, focus on, you know, they're in there training during their off season and everything. Well, I was like partying during my off season and in season, you know, like, I mean, it was a complete opposite. I just wish, you know, like if I could go back, I would have definitely changed my priorities around, you know. It's
so
like,
is there that level of regret nowadays that you're, you know, a father and you have a family and you're in a stable job where you're super successful and you probably learned more from those mistakes to become the man you are now, and it probably has propelled you into the success now where you're like you're doing great, man. But say you were an All-American,
right?
Like it's hard to be regretful looking back at how successful you are now. If you're an All-American, what's the trajectory for you?
Totally.
You become a high school wrestling coach. Like, I mean, it's almost like a trap sometimes. I feel like, and I'm not knocking like that world. I love that world. I was cut from that cloth. So were you.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I've seen, for instance, there's a guy, Matt Gentry, great college wrestler.
Yeah.
Wrestled for Stanford University.
I remember.
Got a degree.
Yeah.
Great guy. But I think, and I've heard this from other people that were friends from him, like it was like almost a detriment that he won that national title, because then the next thing you know, he's involved in wrestling for the rest of his life.
Right.
When this guy went to Stanford, got a degree, I've forgotten what field, but was like straight A's.
Totally.
You never know. Like,
yeah.
So obviously this is a different circumstances we're talking about with you, but you learned so much from these mistakes that it set you off on a line where the trials and errors that you've been through, you're doing great. And there's big things on the horizon for you too in the world that you're leading in the training and entrepreneurship. So I think this is like something to ponder where, you know, I'm glad you made it out alive.
Amen.
Because there was times where I know that you were on the brink and at the bottom. And what were some of those times? Like you're at the bottom of the barrel. What was an experience that was like, this is rock bottom, or is there no rock bottom? Is rock bottom like years?
Rock bottom for me, there's a different rock bottom for everybody. And even when today, like when I'm in my setting at the gym, you know, and I tell people about, you know, I went through a rough patch in my 20s and dealt with like some addiction issues and everything. It's like, and it's not like when people deal with issues, it's not like, oh, mine was more hardcore than yours or anything, but like, my rock bottom, as opposed to like getting a DUI or something, like, no, my rock bottom was, you know, I was a heroin addict and crystal meth. And, you know, I've known about a half a dozen people that have died, friends of mine, friends of ours that we've known. Like, honestly, it's like one a year kind of people that I knew or ran in the same circles with. And there were many different instances where I could have easily overdosed and died, or been in prison for a long time. You know, I went to jail multiple times after, you know, I don't know if, you know, my path led from, you know, the first trip to rehab in college, and then multiple other trips to rehab, and then to jail, and then back to rehab, and then back to jail. And then it was like, during that time and period of my life, it was like 23 to 28. Those 5 years or so, it was just like, I mean, I remember you visited me in jail, right? You know, like, and other friends of ours did too. I mean, I was supposed to be in Tyler Moran's wedding, and I couldn't be in his wedding because I got arrested again, you know, and I was just like, so like, my family suffered incredibly during that time, you know. It was just like, oh, like they did everything as parents to set their kid up, just like, you know, school, sports, like, good family, like, background, everything. And it was just because of my personality and my, you know, inclination towards that lifestyle and everything, and kind of the environment and the people I was drawn towards that led me down that path. And, you know, thank God at the same time, like, I was exposed to so many incredible people. Like, you know, you talk about the power of like mentors or coaches. like the coaches and mentors that I've had in my life
are like second to none.
Dude, like if I go back to, even back to like kids wrestling club, Scorpions.
I was a Scorpion for about a week. Yeah, I remember those days.
I mean, judo camp, you know what I mean? But still, like, the coaches and mentors that I've had in my life, from, the Ken Smith and Larry Meredith to Arnold Alpert, Lyndon Campbell. Then in college, I have Lenny Zaleski, Mark Munoz, Uriah Faber. Those are my 3 coaches. These are the people that, like, and I had incredible relationships with all of them, but I never really fully, like, invested in those relationships because
you had this other
I was like,
life
all
going
right, guys,
on.
all right, practice is over. See ya. Like, what time do I got to be back tomorrow? It was
Yeah.
like, I was more drawn to the other stuff, and then fast forward after, those guys, it's even to my current situation with Todd Durkin, my boss, mentor, like incredible. He's a mentor and coach to some of the highest level business and business people and athletes out there. And through that world, I've become like a trainer to guys like Mike Chandler. And, so all these people along my life, I've been just, given incredible people. And especially back, before I got sober, those coaches and mentors and stuff, like when I was so lucky because, like the people that we talk about that didn't win, that lost the fight.
Yeah.
I had a village behind me the whole time. You know what I mean?
Just think if you didn't have that support,
I mean,
you'd have been on your own and in a
don't,
dark place.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like my family fought for my sobriety forever. My wife, Sam, she's somebody who came in, and so, and other people, friends like you and other coaches and former wrestling teammates, and just, I've always had a just incredible team or village. They say it takes a village. Well, I had a village fighting for me the whole time. Like, it was incredible, and it's still, I completely stepped away from all those people for a long period of time. Like that time, if you look at after that first time I went to rehab, for like the next 5 years, it was like everybody trying to get a hold of me all the time, and I was off doing my thing and running around and running with rough crowds and this and that, and it bums me out looking back because, like my whole college wrestling team, I finally now I'm just like getting like in the last couple years, I've been sober 5 or 6 years here, and in the last couple years I'm just like reconnecting with them. Well, those guys are like I was super tight with in college, but because I had that like whole like
your extracurriculars kind of prevented you from still being that team and that village together with that crew. Like, I mean, I remember, not to take away from what you were saying, but I remember living in the Bay Area. I was finishing school at Menlo College, and I was doing judo at San Jose State. And I went to a wrestling dual meet at San Francisco State University, where UC Davis was wrestling San Francisco State. And I went there, and I hadn't spoken with you for a couple weeks, but you were supposed to wrestle in this meet.
Yeah.
And I show up to go watch, and 141 comes up, and no Jeff Bristol. So I go up and I talk to Mark Munoz and Uriah Faber after, and I'm like, what happened? Where's Jeff? And they're like, you tell me, kind of thing. So they knew that something was wrong. And this wasn't even the end of your career. This was like, you still wrestled.
That was like my junior year, probably.
Yeah.
It was like, that's when the wheels were starting to fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I remember that they loved you. They had your best interest at heart. And all these, I mean, these are people that are really successful as coaches, as competitors in MMA, wrestling, in anything they do. Like, so it's just like you had such like this draw towards this other thing that it prevented you from being able to accept what they were giving. And I understand that, being an athlete, an ex-athlete and a coach now, where I got pulled into the dark side a few times. And I mean, I don't think I had the inclination that you did, where I was like as much of someone who was going to be like the addiction thing, where I was more like the social side of things.
Totally.
Where it probably started in the social side, and then the chemical thing took over, where it was like, okay, I'm trying, like almost like how I don't really agree with it, but for your case and many other cases, for me it doesn't work. But that what's it called when you do a little drug and it builds to the next drug and the next drug?
It's like a gateway.
The gateway.
Yeah.
That the whole theory of the gateway
theory.
drug.
Yeah.
But it's more, it puts you around people who are going to offer you the next step upwards, which is like, you know, the coke or speed or the heroin, and then moves, you know, keeps going. So I don't know if you go above heroin, but that's like the end of the road, right?
End of the road.
Or you could do those together, right?
Yeah.
So that's like probably where it ends. But yeah, I mean, but you were fortunate to be around such good people, and I mean that we're all pulling for you.
Totally.
Me being one of them. So I'm glad that like you've pulled it together, and you're in a place now where it's like you could look back and you have that experience to be able to help others.
Totally.
Where I know plenty of people who, as you were saying, have never come back.
Yeah.
And are still living that life.
Yeah.
I mean, they are not doing great.
Yeah.
I mean, as it's not a longevity game. You can't do that for long without having the repercussions of either, you know, being thrown in jail or losing your life or your health or your relationships, because it just puts you in a dark hole.
Totally.
So when you were at your darkest times and you were juggling this dual lifestyle of super competitor, high level wrestler, D1 athlete, and heroin addict, speed crack, or not, what was that? Crack. Well, hey.
Heroin and meth.
What's that called when you mix them? Speedball.
Yeah.
So those stories of like you basically being in the ER from an ambulance, taking you to the hospital, you waking up and coming to after almost being pronounced dead, pulling out the plugs and going right back to the same place where you did it to shoot more. So I know some of these experiences were like probably you're not proud of.
No.
But is there anything like you'd want to share that might give some of the listeners or people like some context of how deep down the rabbit hole you were?
You know, I think that, you know, one message is that I go to, like, something I do today now in my recovery and where I'm at is I go and speak to schools, and these opportunities kind of were created by clients I worked with that are involved in different schools in San Diego, and I talk to the students because it's like, you know, growing up, I think it's just like who I was as a, you know, my upbringing, like white, upper middle class, Temecula, private school.
Kind of like born
education,
on third base.
Yeah, silver spoon, like, you know, could have gone to Columbia, could have gone to, you know, Ivy League colleges, went to UC Davis. Like, that background should not end up with a needle in your arm, hanging out at, you know, drug houses, overdosing. Like, I had gone from here to, you know, so it's like that. I had everything, the sports, the school, the family, everything, and I still almost died from drug addiction. And so I think that, you know, the message is that, you know, nobody is safe from it. And it's, you don't know who, you know, it's like I said earlier, that I think some of us, I was doing the same things in the beginning, like freshman, sophomore, junior in high school, that us were doing, but it just affected me in a different way than others. And I continued on, you know, and I think, you know, I look back and it's like, you know, I know people that have died from overdoses, or, you know, that are not as lucky as I was, and it could have easily been me at any given time. And, you know, it's just, that's what's sometimes just like, you know, getting news about somebody passing away from this or that. It's like, man, I look back to those times where I was like woken up by the paramedics. Well, what if I wouldn't have been with anybody at that time? So I would have died.
So when you were woken up by a paramedic, you had OD'd.
Right. And luckily I was with somebody who had enough sense to call 911, and the paramedics came and gave me Narcan and woke me up. If I would have been in that bathroom by myself, I would have died.
So you were in a bathroom, like at a friend's house, or not?
Well, like that one particular, I was at a house in like Hemet, Paris area, you know, and I was with a friend, but with other people at a, you know, sketchy place. And I went out after taking a shot of heroin, went out cold. And what happens is you start turning blue, and, you know, the oxygen isn't going to your, and the other people at the house did not want to call. It was my friend.
Because they're worried about
and I was there with Kevin Kane.
Who ended up dying.
You know.
Not too long
ago, a couple years ago. And I loved Kevin, man. Kevin was one of my best friends in high school. He was probably
remember him well, man.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with him, man. He's just a great person. Drug addiction does not care if you're a great person. You know, there's a lot of great people out there that suffer from addiction, and it's like, it sucks because it's like you get labeled like that thief, that liar, and you are all those things because of the drugs you're on. Like, I was all those things. I was the liar, the thief, the whatever. I became this person that just like did these things to my family or whoever, like, you know, and it wasn't me though, you know? And so I sympathize with addicts, you know, addicts within families. You know, those addicts have burnt bridges, and they're a lot of times by siblings are just like, oh, he's a piece of shit.
Write him off.
He's a piece of shit.
Rather than like get.
But it's like, but at the same time, it's like I understand from the family standpoint, because it's like only so much that you can, you know, it comes to a point where it's like you have to cut them off and, you know, let them figure it out on their own and everything. But it's a sad deal, man.
That's crazy.
That same person, Kevin, basically kind of saved me on a couple different occasions, and he, you know, wasn't so lucky. You know, I was able to get out of the scene and get away and get sober, and, you know, have all these other, you know, things. My life trajectory completely changed.
So he wasn't as fortunate to be able to get out of Temecula, and not even to get out of Temecula,
just get out of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, and I do know others that have, but it's fewer and farther between.
Yeah.
You know, so it's good for me to talk about it like right now, because I don't talk about it all the time, you know, and it's like, that's why, you know, being in recovery and going to meetings and AA meetings and, you know, being a sponsor to somebody or anything like that used to be a bigger part of my life, like in the beginning when I wasn't working as much and everything. And that's not, you know, it's like, it's to share, you know, sharing your story, sharing your experience with other people, because you never know who might be listening to this podcast right now.
I actually had someone, so Jessica Penne was on a few weeks ago. Or it might have been Majid. I forgot which person came on, but I talked about you and how, you know, drug addiction gets the better of some people, but it's never too late.
Right.
And I didn't give much detail or context. I just alluded to it this very small little snippet. And I got a message from an old friend on the East Coast who I hadn't heard from in years.
Yeah.
And he went through the same process where he had a good life. And his mom died.
Yeah. And
he went to a dark area and he started using really heavily. And he's like, just in the last few months is like seeing the light of day and has become sober for, I think, a year now, maybe. But it was like 3 or 4 years where he was in a bad place. Yeah. And he hit me up and he's like, can you tell me more about this Jeff Bristol, and what did he do, and how is he dealing with those demons? Because I think, you know, it's a lifelong battle. It's not like I'm over it, bro.
Totally.
You know, so he had some interesting things to say, and I'll connect you guys. But
do it.
He was an MMA fighter. I cornered him in a fight before, and he is a really good person. Yeah. He just had a hard time dealing with some things and got the better of him, but he's in a good place now, so I'm happy for that. But it was just, it's funny you talked about that, and it reminded me of him and how he just hit me up. I haven't talked to him in years, and he heard your just a short little
plug about that.
Yeah. Because I forgot how it even came up last week, but I'm glad you're here to share that, because some people don't have the answers, and they can't go to meetings. They're just they get in the way of themselves to get better. So they need people from the outside like you who have been through it and come out better on the back end. Yeah. So that's a really good thing that you're doing that, man, that you're able to share these stories.
From my experience, the two biggest things that helped me get sober and stay sober, honestly, has been community and fitness. I mean, and then for me, it's kind of combined. You know, it's like the biggest community that I'm a part of is now where I work, my gym. It's all my clients. Like, coworkers. I mean, that's my community. And then it's like my, and that could be your church, your AA group, your whatever. It's like you have to have a community, a positive community around you.
Yeah.
And then it's also, you know, exercise or, you know, a new routine,
I think exercise is big.
Big,
too. Like as
huge.
far as like getting that
For me.
spike of dopamine and being able to feel positive about yourself rather than going to a substance outside of yourself.
Right.
So you're able to kind of dig deeper and get something out of yourself that makes you feel, you know, worthy. It's an interesting thing. Still in my almost 40 years old now, I got to work out every day or I feel crummy. It's a weird thing. Even if I accomplish things,
start going a little crazy.
for sure. If I accomplish things
like
outside of working out, like I make a business deal that makes me and my family a bunch of money, or I design something in graphic design, or I coach something, unless I physically get a hard workout in, it's hard for me to feel on top of my game in a way that I'm not anxious.
Right.
I feel at ease. And that's something I think that'll follow me for the rest of my life. You know, I've competed since I was 7, and you've competed since you were 7.
Yeah.
7. I mean, I remember you wrestling at the Greco State Wrestling Tournament, my first wrestling tournament ever. I think I was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
And you were in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
How old are you in 2nd grade? 6, 7?
You are 8.
8.
I think.
And
I've been wrestling for a couple of years.
Yeah, you won that tournament.
I remember going to that with you guys.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The Halseys and Todd Cadwaller and
a bunch of like hardcore California wrestling legends.
Yeah.
All of us like young and not really knowing what's up, and all of us winning these tournaments. And looking back, it's kind of funny that, you know, I didn't know you were going to be a close family friend for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You were just that scrawny little kid who used his head as like a Brillo pad to wrestle with. But yeah, so there's like plenty of things that I also wanted to talk to you about, just as far as like you getting your life back, and what were those things that like motivated you to come back into like wanting more out of life? I know it was like you were in jail and there's other things, but those forces. So,
you know, I think that's a question that I don't think anybody can answer that has been down a path. And I get asked that when people learn that I did have addiction issues, or I had the path that I had, they go, you know, what was the turning point, or what was this? That's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if people figured out, you know, how to turn things around, people would be turning things around.
It's not a gimmick. It's not a trick. It's like,
I don't know what happened. You know, I think that, you know, like my experience with wrestling, just the people that were around me, it kind of got to a point where I knew it was like I was at the end of my 20s. I've been in and out of rehab and jail for a long time, and through a series of, you know, being surrounded by good people, you know, like when I met my wife, my now wife, Samantha Wilson.
She's super gnarly as well. Like
gnarly.
She's hardcore.
Like I needed somebody gnarly like that. Yeah. She's an ultra runner. She's a social worker. She gets it from like the human standpoint, but she's also like a no bullshit kind of like, she's hardcore.
Yeah.
You know? And
but awesome. Love awesome. Sam, dude.
Yes, Sam is. But meeting her, getting away from some of my old roots, you know, Temecula being one of them.
Sure.
You know, getting out of there and moving to San Diego, and then thank God, like I found my path into my now career, which is, you know, in the fitness industry, training people and coaching people. It's like I've always been a people person. You know, that's why I love to party to begin with. You know, like that's what.
I know. I've seen these videos of you, and I've you know, I just know you, so I know that you bring an energy to the workout arena that people gravitate towards. It's like you're running these. It's almost like more than a workout. It's like an experience, from what I could tell. Like everyone is in unison. You're leading by this positive energy rather than like the come on, the football coach that everyone hates. That's cliche guy, and the clipboard, the guy that's a douche. You're not that guy. You're the guy who's like working on people's positive attributes and clapping and being motivational at the same time as teaching them how to live a lifestyle of being in shape. I've seen from, you know, your 40-year-old types that are out of shape to your professional high level elite athletes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool just from like social media.
Totally.
I really got to get down there and experience it
yeah.
myself. I know you drag me down there, and I'm doing my own thing up here, but I promise.
We both live in San Diego, but it's like opposite ends, and it feels like
it can
for
get
either
further.
of us,
Yeah.
it's like LA and Mexico.
Totally. Well, I think, not to segue like too much, but I'm going to be going down to San Diego more often now.
Yep.
To Chula Vista to go help out at Alliance.
That was the
MMA.
last time you came by there. Was when you went to Alliance last time, and I went with you. So
you were
now we got to
working
make it a regular occurrence.
Yeah, totally.
You got to start taking care of that body, rolling around with all these people.
It's going to be rough.
Time.
Well, I'm going to be helping coach the pro team at Alliance MMA. So the first 3 practices are to just see if it's a good fit.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be down there more often, and then we could like collaborate and grab lunch and work out.
Definitely.
So it'll be an interesting experience for me, but I don't want this to be about me, so I want it to be about Jeff. So is there anything new and interesting down there at your gym that you have been working on? Or I know you have a lot of projects in the making, and you work with a lot of high level athletes, and I know like Mike Chandler, and you have a good relationship, and he just moved out to Nashville.
Yep.
Right. And he has his own gym, and
yep.
He was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I listened to it, and it was really interesting. I know Mike, but I don't know him like that, where, a 3-hour conversation.
Totally.
And I know that you guys are close, and only peripherally do I know him through you. But so I know that you guys were you got offered to go out there and help coach.
So yeah, like kind of rewind a little bit, just back to like, we were talking about like how did things change kind of for me, and first of all was getting into that training world. It's weird how like you talked about that example with say you were an All-American and all of a sudden you're a wrestling coach, and it's like, I know my experience led me to Fitness Quest 10. It was all like, as cliche as it sounds, it's like I literally got into the fitness and training industry because I, for the first time in my life, got sober, moved out of Temecula, went down to San Diego, and I went and applied at a job. I got a sales job. I had it for about 6 months, and a bunch of my coworkers were leaving to go to this other company. I went and applied there, and I wasn't on it. I didn't fill out my application with all my, record and everything like that. And so they hired me. I took the job. I went through their training program, and 2 weeks after the training program, I got called into the human resources department, and they let me go. And so I found myself unemployed, living in San Diego. I was trying to get my back on my feet, and I saw this gym that was right up the street from my house, and they had advertised on Craigslist for a part-time position.
What year is this?
This is 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had no plan of being in the fitness industry. I had a background I had a college degree from UC Davis, wrestling, no real work experience to talk about besides working for family company, Bristol construction, whatever, and like nothing really at that point in my life. And so I took the job, and it ended up being at an incredible gym that I've now been there coming up on 7 years. And it was literally like, like a God shot, one of those like divine intervention type things where I was living within a mile of this gym, not knowing who was the owner or what the gym was. But I was actually going to 24-hour fitness across the freeway because Juan Mora was a manager there at the time, and I was working out for free and going to see Juan and this and that. But I saw this job posting, and I replied to it. My thought was like, hey, like I like working out. Like I can get this part-time job while I continue to look for a quote-unquote real job, And so that's what brought me into the doors of Fitness Quest 10 and started my training career. And I remember the first week there, and during the interview process and stuff, it was like, holy crap. Like, first of all, Todd Durkin, my boss, good friend.
A little context, he was on a television show called...
that was NBC Strong last year.
Yeah, and he was like, he did awesome. He did great. He was like, came in, I think, in the top 2 of all the trainers that... It's a crazy show. I actually followed it just because of you. And I watched all the episodes, and he got called back on to the show after like getting booted, but then they brought him
Yep.
on because he was so like
The personality.
the personality.
Yeah, totally.
So I could see why you worked
Yeah.
really well.
So, like, Todd Durkin is an internationally recognized trainer, coach. He's like a, if you go to any of the fitness conferences, he's one of the top speakers there. And so he's a big guy in the fitness industry. Fitness Quest 10 has grown from.
So is it more fitness than strength and conditioning? Is that like, are they two different things?
No, I mean, so Fitness Quest 10 is a gym, but we do everything there, from athlete performance to general health and fitness, like personal training, large group, small group classes. And then there's like Pilates, yoga, massage.
So strength and conditioning is like pigeonhole, like a little bit
right.
more.
Okay, So strength and conditioning would be more if you're talking about from like sports or an athlete.
But you're
perspective.
all inclusive.
You're a strength and conditioning coach. That's a lot of times when you're referring to athletes.
Yeah.
We train a lot of athletes and very high level athletes. Guys like Drew Brees and LaDainian Tomlinson trained their whole career there. And so that's what put Todd and Fitness Quest 10 on the map. He opened up the gym in 2000, just him and another person, and now we have 42 people on staff and we do everything.
And he was a football player.
He was a football player in college and after college, and that kind of led his path to eventually opening up his own facility. But he's a motivational speaker and a great coach and leader. He coaches some of the highest level athletes, but he's also, on the flip side, he coaches other fitness professionals, business owners. He's very big into the personal development and motivational speaking arena and everything like that. So when
not a bad sensei to have, as far as like
totally.
You needing someone that's going to be a little bit more like a little Tony Robbins-y.
Totally.
I mean, not to like shit on that, but that's someone that you like at the time. Man, you're in a dark place. You don't have a job. You don't have any work experience. You've been in prison or jail. You've been in rehab, but you have a degree. You're smart. You're an ex-athlete of a really super high level. You need someone that could guide you. And this guy seems like the perfect guy.
It was like it was meant to be there type thing. And so that's when I started my career there. I wasn't like a certified trainer or anything like that. I had my background in sports, which that alone is the best experience or background that you could have, actually being there and done it yourself and trained at a high level and everything like that. But I started working there. I saw he has, these events in San Diego, these live events where it's like a mentorship program where all these trainers and gym owners from all over the world come, and it's like, a 3-day event, and he does all this coaching on personal development, sales, marketing, fitness, everything about being a fitness professional. And he was hosting one of those within the first couple of weeks of me working there. And I just remember thinking like, man, I could totally do this for a career.
So early on you were
in the beginning, I was kind of blown away, and it was like, we're ranked top 10 gyms in the country by Men's Health. So it wasn't like I just got a job at your local 24-hour fitness. So it was like I had gotten my foot in the door at one of the top gyms in the country. Yeah. And it was right down the street, a half a mile from my house by chance. And so
that's cool.
And I fell into it because I had gotten let go from that other sales job because of my background, So it was like a series of events that led me there, where it was kind of like I started working there and getting in my groove. I was going back to school, went back to UCSD Extension and did an exercise science program, and then started training people. And it's kind of just been a thing that has just picked up, and it's, definitely feel like, if you can find something that you love to do, and I mean, that's the big challenge in life, right? Is to
have your work to be something you love, instead of just punching a time clock where you're just dying inside.
So many people do it
slowly every day.
So many people do it. And it's like, I go to work and it's like, we're having fun and I'm on a team again. Like, I feel like I'm in college almost. Like it's like my wrestling team, but this time it's like, all these trainers of different ages and, males, females, and we're training all different types of athletes. And we're, we have a lot of like just local San Diego residents that are clients. The gym is in Scripps Ranch, and it's a lot of like more like affluent families, and so a lot of really like successful professionals in their own arena, which is awesome. It's like I have all these mentors and all these different arenas, and I'm the expert in my field to them, which at first was like such a weird thing for me, because it was like, wait a minute.
Some CEOs looking
Some
to you for
CEOs like
answers.
asking me like for advice, and and I'm like, bro, I was in like rehab a couple years ago. It was kind of, but I've grown. I've grown to like, it's really actually helped me a lot in my career, because think about this.
Confidence-wise, your confidence.
Well, I mean, from a confidence standpoint, but almost like, say, like, even if you're dealing with like weight loss, like weight loss is such a hard thing for people to beat. It's an addiction. And you're like working with some trainer that's like got 5% body fat, and you're like, bro, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to not be able to stop eating. I'm like, oh yeah? Like, you don't know what it's like to not fucking stop sticking needles in your arm. Like, I've struggled in ways that other people have.
Is that something you like go to sometimes?
No. But it's just, I think people know about my past, and they're more like just, open to, they're more comfortable with me, and they're more open to, I mean, really, like, as a trainer or a coach, especially as when you're training people, I think for general health and fitness that are just like dealing with life, as aside from an athlete, we have athletes that come in that are there for a purpose, to get better at their game.
Do you like working with athletes more than people with issues not issues, but
right,
people that are just they're more average, but yet affluent and have their own goals that are not like trying to be the best running back or
honestly, like I've had this conversation with somebody before, and it's like, in a perfect world, the athlete training is awesome because it's like fun and exciting, and you're like, hey, like,
their milestones
Mike Chandler,
are up here.
Mike Chandler, like world champ, like we're training for the belt right now, and it's like hard, intense training and everything like that. And I love that, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to have 100% of those clients. I really like it that, like, if I could have picked a good split, it'd be like, 20% like athletes, and maybe like 80% people that like
a healthy balance.
or like more like, it's a dad that, he's running a business and he has a wife and kids and he's struggling. I really connect with other parents right now, like especially parents of like young adult kids, because it's like, they know, I like see my parents. They're like a lot of times dealing with stuff like their kids, depression or, drug or addiction or whatever it is. It's like, I can totally empathize with that and talk from a place of like experience. And it's like really put me in a place to really connect with my clients at a much deeper level, I think. And I think just like with coaching or training or anything, a trainer, training, you can be a great trainer if you can connect with people. I don't care what degree you have or how many masters of exercise science or whatever, or this or that. It's like, none of that shit matters if you can't connect with the person on a deeper level. And that's what I love to do, and that's what has helped me, I think, just with my experiences, that I've been down some to a dark path, and it gives me a different little bit of a perspective on. Yeah,
you could relate to a lot more broad of an audience than your normal person who just did everything by the book and did things probably in a way that you would want your kid to do.
Yeah. You want your kid to go to college, be successful, get a job. It's like, but I've had a lot more life experience for somebody my age because I've been through real stuff. Like even me and my wife, we've been through real stuff before we even got married, because she met me before I
got clean.
Yeah. And we had major ups and downs. So it was like before we even got married, we had been through the darkness that like usually married couples don't go through till way after the honeymoon phase and everything's and
it's like you did it in reverse almost.
Totally, man. And it's like, even people, it's like, you don't know what people are going through. I can literally think about last night. I had a client, if you from the outside, it's like he's a doctor, his kid's going to this really respectable private school.
Success story.
But it's like he's in tears with me because he's worried about the social stuff going on with his son in high school who's going away to college, and his wife's got a drinking problem. And it's like, dude, and I got this, I'm like, this guy's unloading on
me.
That's
deep, yeah.
Yeah, and that happens a lot, and
especially you're getting them working out and endorphins things are happening where emotions are coming to the surface and you're there for it's like the bartender, that cliche thing, you're there drinking and you're that guy a little bit.
Not the bartender anymore.
No.
Used to be.
But
totally.
But that's kind of what I'm envisioning at least.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you
So
see all walks of life.
Yeah, I see all walks of life, and going back to my experience has helped me as a like we look back and go, dang it, like I shoulda, coulda, woulda, wish that never happened. Obviously, it caused myself, my parents, my family, everybody a ton of pain,
heartache
and
sure.
suffering.
Yeah.
But myself and my family included has been able to use my experience, our experience as a family to help other families that have gone through tough stuff and so that from that point of view, and then the other side of being like a trainer at Fitness Quest 10 is that I get to be surrounded by athletes that are still chasing to be chasing their dreams, chasing to be at the top of their game and everything. Sure. So it keeps me in the mix a little bit. Yeah.
Like keeps you young a little bit.
Keeps me young. Yeah. I'm training guys that are like whether it's a high school athlete, a college athlete, a professional athlete. We're not, the one thing that I think I've expressed to you in the past before is that I see you and you're really connected with the MMA world still, and like in another life maybe I would have been, but then again, that's another life. I maybe I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I don't think if I didn't go down that path. Obviously, I would have never met my wife. I wouldn't have knocks.
Totally.
Those things. All those things, and I would not give up any of that. But like as a wrestler, wish I could go back, and that's why it's like now like when I have these
those demons.
Oh man, yeah. I tell people when I talk about you, it's like the stars didn't align for me because a lot of times, per my own doing, but in another life, maybe, whatever could have happened in high school, college. And, especially I was so close with Uriah in college and stuff. Uriah segued right into the, MMA world. Like
seamless transition.
Seamlessly. Like I was Uriah's practice partner a lot because he was a scrapper.
I was too. I went up to UC Davis a few times to wrestle with you. And the next thing I know, I'm drilling with Uriah how to do submission counters.
Totally.
Because my judo background.
Just getting into the MMA. So it's like, I've thought in the past, well, like, man, if I wasn't like going off the deep end at that time, I could have just, stayed up there in Sacramento and been part of the whole
team alpha male.
Yeah.
Thing.
But it's like, then again, that's not the
trajectory
way you look at
that
life.
Was meant. Yeah.
I mean, even for you, I'll tell you, just like my heart aches because, like I know for you, if the stars would have lined, I had this conversation like recently because I was telling somebody about you, but it's like, the stars aligned for you in another lifestyle or in another life, national champ or All-American in Nebraska or judo Olympian or medalist or whatever, all these things that you chased for years and years. But it's pretty awesome how it's like coming full circle now where you're like getting that through coaching and the high level coaching that you're doing with the judo team, the Olympic team, and with MMA and Ronda Rousey and everything. It's like you're finally kind of like getting what's due to you after all that work.
That's a way to look at it, I guess. I know what you're saying though. I know exactly
what I mean?
You're saying. Yeah,
it is coming full circle, and it's but just like myself or yourself, if we sit there looking back at like, if you use that as
to
fuel or motivation, like that's what it's doing.
Yeah, I don't like living in the past, but I do understand intense observation of reflecting on your past work and how that pushes you forward in the future. And totally. I think I had some mistakes that I isolated and I learned from. Yep. Especially in that run for 2004 is what you were mostly referring to. Jeff was at the Olympic trials where I competed in the finals of the Olympic trials, and it didn't work out for me. I lost by like a very interesting rule that ended up getting overturned about 6 months later. That rule didn't exist anymore. So I hit my head, and the doctor came out and grazed my shoulder, and that disqualified me because the doctor had done a procedure on me, like the way the rules constituted. So in judo. So it was kind of a weird little thing that happened where it seemed like it was kind of my dreams were like pulled out from under me on a carpet I was standing on. But Jeff was there to witness the whole thing, and I had a section of, maybe 10 people like Jeff that were there, and it was like such a high going into those matches where I felt like it was like team Justin totally,
We had I thought it was more than 10 people, at least it seemed like.
Maybe
we were just being that loud.
No, probably. I was down on the floor most of the time, but I was like totally feeling all your energy, and I was. What's that?
Everyone was coked up.
Yeah, we were actually. We were going out to the parking lot in between matches. And so,
This is who I roll with.
Yeah, I'm not proud of that. But,
that's the way it went down. And, I mean, I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from that experience about myself and how I look at myself in the mirror and what my self-worth is. It's not whether a referee points in my direction or my opponent's direction. It's like the work that went into it, how I handle myself afterwards, and how I conduct myself as an adult, rather than trying to point fingers and living in the past and trying to stay kind of in a negative place over it. And it was really tough. I mean, I was digging ditches. I remember waking up one morning after those Olympic trials. I had a job at making $8 an hour digging ditches that summer. And I woke up to USA Today, that TV show on NBC, where the guy that beat me was Alex Adiano was on USA Today being interviewed in his judo gi like the day before he competed. And he was, he made it. The highest you could make it in judo. Like,
that's the goal. I mean, the goal is to be an Olympic qualifier.
Yeah, an
Olympic. You and Alex had gone head to head how many times?
15, 20 times.
And you guys you had how many wins and he had how many wins?
It was pretty close. I had more, but he
could have been.
It could have been gone either way.
Right. And so and I know, like, even with your wrestling career, it's like easy to look back and say, hey, I think you did the right path by chasing your judo dreams after, but same thing with wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think in
a perfect world, we both have those similar, like, okay, if I would have stuck around a little longer here and bought into this coaching philosophy, sure, my demons weren't exactly the same as yours, but I was like, I'm stuck here in Nebraska.
Yeah.
I don't like this culture. I don't like these coaches. Yeah. And the same coach is there now who's coached Jordan Burroughs, who has been there for 15 years, the success is like obvious. It's not someone like that was just there for a year as a replacement coach. He's a legend. Yeah. So it's not someone I had to look inward after a while and be like, was
it him or was it me?
Exactly. And I had my very similar experiences you had where I was the guy who was going hardcore at the bar or doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing during season or during off season when I could have been getting better in the sport of wrestling or getting my grades better. I was focused on the social aspect a little bit and I was stuck in a place where I didn't feel that it was home. Where I was in the middle of the country and people didn't have the same upbringing. No one had the same upbringing as me, being Hispanic, smaller,
Southern California,
boy, totally. So things didn't really mesh that well after my coaches got fired and they brought in the new coaches. Yeah. So, but there are regrets for both of us. And I think we've done pretty well. I mean, I remember talking a very similar conversation at the wrestling state tournament a couple of years ago. We were both there. We both coach a wrestler. He is a strength and conditioning coach, and I'm his wrestling coach, private coach. He wrestled at Poway, Chase Zolman, 4-time state place winner, All-American. And we were there one night, I think it was in between the first and the second night of competition, and we were just talking about our lives and where we're at now and how things have gone for us and are we happy with our life and all really positive stuff. And we're like, the next step is obviously having a kid. And we both kind of, tapped into that literally. And
right when we got home,
the day we got home, both of our wives we're pregnant.
Yeah.
So our kids are within a week apart.
Yeah. Could have been born on the
same day. I think they're
10 days apart or less or something.
Yeah, my wife's Adam, my son, was a little late, so they had to kind of induce. Where I think on paper they should have been born around the same day.
Yeah.
So it's funny that we both drove home. I remember the drive home too. We were like stuck in traffic, and I think Conor McGregor was fighting Nate Diaz. I remember that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I was getting texts, and it was Misha versus Holly, and Holly had just beat Ronda, so I remember like the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting little thing, and now look at us. We both have kids. We're adults.
That's incredible.
It's crazy because I don't feel like I have anything figured out. I'm just
learning
trying
as you going.
Figure things out as we go, and we must be doing something right.
Yeah.
So I'm stoked for our trajectories,
Right.
and hopefully, you're able to keep the positive life force going, and I know you will, and I really respect all the hard work you've done to keep things on a swivel and make sure that you're providing for your family. And
well, you can attest to that fact that you find like you're in your career, and then becoming a father, just you have your purpose in life, but then it's like you have your first child, and it's like that purpose is just amplified, and you're more driven, and whatever drives each of us as people to do. I mean, what drives me is the people that are around me. I'm lucky still today, just like I have in other wrestling teams and stuff in the past. I still have this incredible group of people around me and everything like that, and people like yourself. You're motivating me from afar, doing your deal. It's like rubbing off on me, but then it's like, then you come home at night, you come home from like traveling with the judo team or something, you come back to Adam, and it's just like,
it's amazing. It's so
just reinforces everything.
It makes everything relevant. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But I'm really stoked for you, and I'm glad you came, man. And I just wanted to thank you, and I'm gonna take you up on that workout. At some point
workouts once a week.
Workouts,
come on, bro.
Okay, so if this Alliance MMA gig
in this week,
if this Alliance MMA gig works out, I'll be down there more often. So
awesome,
I think
man.
it'll be something a little bit more realistic than right now. But thanks for coming, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Anything, your gym you want to plug?
Yeah, Fitness Quest 10 in Scripps Ranch. It's an incredible place with incredible culture, and come by and get a workout in, take a class. You won't be disappointed.
Cool, man. And
Yes,
just like as far as some of the stuff we talked about, as far as addiction, we've all had friends that have gone down that rabbit hole into the dark arts, and there's a way out. You could get help, and there's SoCal Recovery. It's SoCalRecovery.com or SCRC. And just if you feel like you need an option in that regard, look it up and try and get some help, man. And again,
reach out to me.
Yeah,
I'm happy to talk to anybody
for sure.
Yeah.
And you could find your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter. What do you got?
Bristol Fit @BristolFit is my Instagram, and follow me and send me a message if you have any questions about training or recovery or anything.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So that'll conclude this episode of the Flow Factory podcast. Follow us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes, and share it, like it. Have a good night, guys. Take it easy.
Take
Peace.
care.